Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Sunletter. This is How to Fight CPS and Win, Vincent Davis's show. I'm standing in tonight for Miss G. She's with Mr. Davis, and they're out fighting corruption and helping families and can't make it to the show tonight. So I'm standing in, which is an honor. Also, an honor tonight, I have a special guest, Christine, and she is a medical professional herself and has a very substantial story to share with us. And not only is it a substantial story, but it's a story with a good ending to give families hope and inspiration to keep fighting because you can get your kids back. Which I guess I'm spilling the beans about Christine's story, but there's so many details to her story that it's a lot to hear, and it's very insightful about what happens in the system. So, without further notice, Christine, welcome to the show. And would you like to give a little background about your situation?
Thank you. Where do you want me to start?
It's a substantial story. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, a lot of chaos, and a child that came home. You know,
And
so
that's the best part.
yeah.
And
So maybe start with. I guess you were saying that your child was removed because of something minor, like a family squabble.
yep, the family decided to contact my biological family, my oldest daughter. I have 5 children. Their father unfortunately passed away in 2019. Otherwise, I don't think a lot of this would have happened. But my oldest decided to go searching for answers as far as my biological family that I had not spoken to in over 30 years. And with that came a lot of drama. Um, she felt like she would be better to take care of my youngest child as an older sister of 9 years and contacted DCF. And with that, she even convinced my biological sister to write documents that were false and her ex husband, and everything just snowballed from there. Well, the court doesn't look at anything that they receive, they just automatically claim you're guilty. And it's difficult to find an attorney that will actually give you the evidence, even at adjudication. So I guess my biggest words of advice are make sure you figure out what they have presented at adjudication, because everything at that court hearing could have been completely squashed and it was not. So unfortunately, because I was not aware of what happened or what they had, my child was deemed in need of care, a sink case. And her sister just literally convinced a 15-year-old girl that everything is okay and I'm going to take you out to eat every day. And it didn't take long. Our parent advocate said it only takes so long before a child's going to want to come home. And she did. But unfortunately, she was taken from her sister's house, who she claimed abuse against, and was put into a foster home. The foster home proceeded to drug her. And then a judge within the case decided that her older sister, who started this commotion, could take her to Colorado to see a family that sexually abused me as a child. And my child ended up being with a person that abused me as a child by herself. And the judge was okay with that.
So none of this makes sense. Why would a judge order a child to go to uh, a distant relative, even um, when there was a history of child abuse there? So when you say this person abused you, was it was that person adjudicated as an abuser? Was that
I don't know the status because I didn't talk to them for 30 years, but I was an emancipated minor at the end of it.
so you were emancipated because of abuse, or
Yes.
emancipated because you had a job and
I
you
was a
were
foster child and then emancipated.
okay, and you were emancipated because he was abusing you?
Yes.
Well, see, there's so many moving pieces to your story, because a lot of times you hear of people who grew up in the foster care system that they come back around for your kids later on.
Exactly. And it started as soon as their father became ill. I went back to school to get my degree because I was going to have to become the sole breadwinner. And he had been the sole breadwinner up until he could no longer do it. And as soon as my kids went to a certain public school, he said, "Well, I called on you because your daughter was riding bike during school hours." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "So do you call on everybody?" And this principal literally pulled out a crate from underneath his desk and said, "This is how many people I've turned into." Then it was called SRS, but now it's DCF in our state.
Wow. So, do you mind sharing with the viewers what area of medicine you work in?
I am a nurse with a bachelor's degree, and I'm currently working on my master's in education.
Wow.
Which the parental evaluation, I have to laugh, it was sealed, but the counselor that I see was able to get a copy, even though it was sealed. And it literally states that I probably barely have a high school diploma.
So, you're a medical professional. I'm a medical professional. I'm a physician assistant, right? And I'll tell you one of the reasons, and it seems like you did the same kind of thing. This was maybe your logic too, but you can tell me. Um, when I was just even a child growing up, I aspired to be a mom, and a good mom. And one of the reasons I went into medicine was actually so I could be a great mom and take care of my family, because I always thought, health is so important. And here you went through your own trauma and medical experience of a spouse that passed. And I'm sure it had to have touched you in a certain way, that's why you went into nursing school, so you could be a better parent, take care of your family's medical needs, and care for your family. I don't know if I can't put words in your mouth, but I know that's how I felt. And I know the reasons in my family, the people that were sick, that's why it inspired me to do what I did.
And I grew up in a medical family, and that's just what you do. You take care of people. And the saddest thing is that my husband could have survived, but we did not have the finances to cure his condition. So,
And then you have how many other children? You have four other children.
yes.
And I always am baffled by the situation when you have all these other children at home, but they take one.
And literally, the 17-year-old child was at the home when they took the then 14-year-old child. They pulled the 17-year-old child out of the home, told him he could not talk to anyone, couldn't do anything. And then they just went ahead, walked in, and took the 14-year-old. Offered him nothing.
So you have all these other children at home, but you're somehow an inept parent, and you're only inept to one child and none of the others.
Yep. And this happened twice because my second daughter, we tried to get mental health services for. At 16, her father and I decided that she was getting into too much trouble. She had graffitied the school. She had stopped a train, which is a federal offense, by the way. Don't stop a train. And we got a bed for her like a responsible parent would at a mental health facility. And as soon as we got her in, the next day we were supposed to have a meeting with her father, myself, and I, and DCF's involved. But the kicker is her father was on disability. So guess what wages were garnished as soon as they took that child in? And then this youngest child of mine gets death benefits. Guess who took those state benefits?
Mm-hmm.
And even after I have her back, I cannot be a payee representative. They're giving it to a person that we don't even know, who has not supplied us with any of her funding, like meager means, and they are holding on to her benefits. In fact, the check that they sent us spelled her name incorrectly. So when she's 18, she can't even go get that money because they spelled her name incorrectly.
There was another family that I interviewed on this show, just a different segment, but it's all Mr. Davis's shows, and the mother got her kids back, but yet even though the kids were in her house and back, they're still garnishing child support from the father's paycheck.
Yeah, that's all they want. And as soon as
Yeah.
they saw my kids had Social Security death benefits or SSDI, they were on, and I could pay child support, of course.
Wow.
And there's no fighting it. Like, I've been on the phone with Social Security for days, and there's no answers. There's no one to help. There's no one that wants to touch it. The only thing that I've been told that I could possibly do to rectify this case and help other people is to write a book. And a parent advocate told me that if I write a book, two things are going to happen. It's going to become a bestseller, or people are going to pay me to shut up.
You know, I think Mr. Davis has a service for assisting people to write books on their situation. I saw him talking about it one time, but I don't know anything more than just what I've already said. Um, but if you want assistance, you may want to look into that. I think there's also it's helpful too to have some legal review of this, of anything that you publish, because sometimes when you hit all their sore spots, they get kind of inflammatory.
And I talked to my daughter today and I said, you know what? I'm including all of these caseworkers' names. I will change our names, but the judge and everyone else, his name can go in. And I said, how do I put in all of the recorded conversations that have happened with DCF and our contractor here, St. Francis, where they basically condemn themselves. In fact, one of the caseworkers sent me a letter that if you and your attorney have any further questions, I'll be happy to speak with you with our lawyers present. And I kept that email and I'm like, that's all going in the book.
So it's really particularly disturbing to me, not only that they sent your child to go visit a complete and total non-relative,
I mean,
because
biologically related, but never, like, not even fictive kin. Like, my children have all had a grandmother that's fictive kin, which is the term apparently. Like, they have a grandmother that they've known and grandfather their entire lives. But to send them to see my biological family that I've had no contact with for 30 years.
so that's particularly bothersome. But the other part that's particularly bothersome, well, it's all bothersome, right? But that they medicated her, because you're a nurse, right? And not only are you a nurse, but now you're getting your master's, you said, and you're going to be a nurse educator, which is even higher up. Um, so you want to talk a little bit about the medications that they used and
So
that
when she
experience?
was taken from her sister finally upon her request, and that's a funny story. She says I can never repeat what she did to get out of there, but it is a very cute story. She was placed in August in a foster home. And by August, September, October, she had gone from no medications whatsoever, none, to October, we're on aripiprazole, Buspar, clonidine, um, chlor. I can't pronounce the one. It's an antihistamine, a first generation, to control the side effects. And I don't even know for what. So I went ahead and I got the records. And it was actually a caseworker that gave me the records from the mental health facility that she was at. And she said, you didn't get these from me. And I'm like, okay, well, thank you. So I read through them. They medicated her saying that she was a fetal alcohol syndrome baby, which we never drank ever while our kids were growing up. Like, ever. I didn't have time. I had 5 children underfoot. And that she broke her arm due to child abuse. And if you pull up her records, if you would have been a prudent and honest provider, you would have gotten her medical records, which she's seen the same provider since she's been 1 year old, and found out that she broke her arm at school and that all of her prenatal records have no evidence of fetal alcohol syndrome. And that's what they medicated her on. So I went ahead and I turned those records over to the medical board here. I turned the
Good girl,
provider in.
good girl.
I called the Office of Civil Rights and I said they're committing Medicaid fraud
Good for you.
because that is not what you do. And I don't know, I'll probably never hear anything back. But the fact is, if they're doing this to my child, they're doing it to everybody else's children as well.
Well, there's
And
one more thing. You're a nurse educator, right? Or working on that. Do you have to educate nurses on appropriate use of restraint? Because is
yes,
that not also chemical restraint?
correct. But if you're a foster parent and you want your kid to go to bed at 9:30 at night and not wake up till 9 in the morning, and then you get $1,700 a month instead of $900 a month,
Right.
why wouldn't you place my child on all these psychotropic medications? So as soon as she got home, April the 6th, I made appointments with the counselor that had seen her prior to leaving because her father had died. And I also made an appointment with a psychiatric nurse practitioner who I've had to deal with, considering everything we've been through. There were some meds needed. And I took her up there and she said, I don't recommend any meds. And she goes, this is quite the list. Like, this was not warranted at all.
Well, so that touches me because they did the same thing to my child. And we were discussing this a little bit before the show. And my ex-spouse is an attorney, and he was an attorney for CPS. And my kids disclosed abuse, sexual. Also, my daughter was repeatedly running away from her father and disclosing strangulation. So they put her on similar medications, Risperdal, Clonidine, a sedative, and a stimulant similar to like Risperdal or Adderall, right? And my child came to my house reiterating the counselor told her that one pill is to stop her from running away. One pill is to stop her from being mad at her father. One pill is to help her sleep at night because she's scared to sleep at his house. And one pill is for her to help her wake up and go to school in the morning. And she, to this day, refuses to take any medication because she's scared. And she's 17, almost 18 now. And she won't take any medication ever because she's so scared because of what happened to her. She was so drugged. She
Yep.
said, Mom, I felt so drugged at that time. I was afraid I was going to die because I was so drugged.
Yeah.
And so when I went through that, you went through that, you're a nurse, I'm a physician assistant, we're medical people, we know how wrong this is. And they're doing this routinely. I mean, we're not even in the same state.
Nope. And that's
And my daughter's prescribing psychiatrist knew there were allegations from my daughter of sexual abuse and strangulation, and he still did that.
well, it's just like having the wrong records. I even asked for amendment to the record. They refused.
Because they liked what was in there, the narrative that they were creating.
Mm-hmm. And that's when I turned it over to the Office of Civil Rights, hoping that they would do something as far as HIPAA is concerned and Medicaid fraud.
Right.
Because how can you justify drugging a child based on a false narrative? And
Right.
unless I scream at the top of my lungs, this is never going to go anywhere.
Right. I know in New York State, when you report any physicians, so it would be a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. But in New York State, if you report any physicians to the Office of, I think it's Office of Physician Medical Conduct, something OPMC, they have to do investigations on every complaint that comes through. And, so I can't ever say what their disposition or findings will or will not be, but, that's the comparable in New York State to kind of what you're talking about, the avenue that you tried there. But,
and I did contact an attorney, and he said that, I'll get back to you in a couple months to see if you've heard anything. I don't think I'll ever hear anything about what that investigation ended up being.
yeah,
But
likewise.
I do know that it was not me who reached out to the Board of Healing Arts. It was the Kansas Department of Health and Environment that reached out to them. And now we have the Division of the Child Advocate, which is where I went to legislation and spoke in need of having a separate oversight committee for DCF and their contractors. I don't know which one actually contacted that office.
So, so you had an attorney when you went into court for all this fighting, right?
Yes.
And what state are you in? Do you mind saying?
Kansas.
You're in Kansas?
I am in the geographical center of the United States.
And were you happy with your attorney?
No, and I hired him. I paid for my attorney.
And you were not happy with him?
No,
But you got your kid back.
I did, but it wasn't because of him. It was because I raised so much ruckus and I wrote everybody and I called them and they accused me of being drunk and high and on drugs. And then they wanted drug tests. And then we got the case transferred because originally the case was in a different county where my daughter lived because she's the one that filed the complaint. So this case started 2.5 hours from where I live. And it took a year to get it transferred back to the county I live in, which is a very small town. And I knew once it was transferred back here that this would go a lot differently. And at the very last hearing, my attorney didn't even show up. It was one of his cohorts. And he said, in my 42 years of experience, I have never seen a case go on this long.
Because they were trying to keep your kid from you.
Yes. They wanted to drug her. And even the foster mother, like I said, was literally when we were in court, because we were on Zoom, I have my daughter texting me that she said, the foster mom's telling you to shut your mouth. Shut your mouth, mom. Shut your mouth. You're never going to get me back if you don't shut your mouth. And I said, no, I got you back because I didn't shut my mouth.
Right.
And I recorded everything, whether it's
Smart.
legal or not. I don't care. I have it all.
Smart. Did you have any favorite recording devices?
Just my phone.
Your phone?
Even with some of the counseling sessions where the counselor allowed my daughter to literally verbally abuse me, even though that's not what she felt. It was never redirected. But the
Right.
2 Zoom meetings that we had with the head directors, with my attorney present, are just unfathomable. You cannot believe what they actually said on there. And that second meeting is when I got the letter or the email stating, if you have any more questions, I will be more than happy to speak with you and your attorney, with DCF attorneys present.
Now, do you know if Kansas is a one-party consent state, or if you have to inform the other side you're recording?
I think it's a one party.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we are in New York. But Vincent Davis, his practice is mainly, I think he's licensed in many states, but his office is mainly in California, and California doesn't have the luxury of being a one-party consent state for recording. So
And
that's nice.
Point, I don't care. They have nothing else they can take from me. They have pretty much bankrupted me. I'm going to write my book. I'm putting all their names in it. And what else are you going to do? If nothing else, there's going to be enough people to get the copies of this book and understand. And my daughter even was joking. I said, so how do I put these recordings in a book? And she's like, Mom, you just make a QR code.
That's right.
Tag order.
You know, my kids taught me how to use Apple Pay on my phone. So when in doubt, when you don't know something about IT, ask your kid.
I'm like, and once it's out there, you can take it back.
Yeah.
It's
brilliant.
And I have nothing to lose. So I was talking to my boss the other day. I'm like, I'm full of anger and rage. There's nothing you can do. Like, I'm going to write this all out so that parents have some avenue to fight this, because in Kansas, I'm hearing the same story over and over. But the problem is these parents are either in poverty or they do have drug issues that they're scared about. I've heard about parents who have gone, they've been told they live in Topeka, but they have to go get a drug test in Kansas City. I'm like, how can you keep a minimum wage job? I was lucky enough, I had the ability to go to the parenting classes that they had at ridiculous times. I was lucky enough to have a boss who said, "Oh, yeah, go get drug tested because we can't wait to see how this turns out." Everybody else doesn't. I did. So I am going to have to pay this forward now and help everyone else who has no voice.
You're right.
And they literally have no voice whatsoever. And for
Yeah,
this to happen,
I don't know. We seem to be a bit like-minded. So tell me what you think about this. But a lot of times I tell people, when you encounter a situation like this, it's like meeting a bear in the woods, because you're never going to be as big or powerful as the entire system. Their pockets are endless. Their influence is pervasive. And so always, no matter how much money you have, you can be a billionaire and you still don't have as much money and resources as they do. So you're always going to be the smaller guy when you're going up against the system. And like you described, your attorney seemed to be helping the other guys more than you,
in
right?
fact, he wasn't prior. He thought this was a closed and shut case at adjudication, but he didn't disclose to me what evidence was even present at adjudication. So the primary physician that's seen Anne Marie, or sorry, our entire lives, ends up being subpoenaed. And so you're basically led to file no contest to the child is out of my house without my permission.
Just as an aside, that's a violation of due process when you don't even know the allegations and things against you so you can defend yourself.
Nope.
But back to the bear in the woods concept, I always tell people this is kind of like meeting a bear in the woods, because the bear in the woods is always bigger than us. And if you if you do the whole little silence thing and you sit there like a little bunny, you're going to get eaten.
Yeah.
And if you run, the bear is going to show you how he's bigger than you and chase you and show you he's boss, and you're still going to get eaten. The thing that you need to do is you need to annoy the bear. So you throw rocks at him and you shout at him and you show him that you're going to fight back. And then the bear thinks, well, I could totally still eat this person, but this person's annoying, so I'll go to somebody else and pick on somebody else.
That is what happened. In fact, I don't think anybody in the state likes to hear my name.
Yeah.
Including when I went to legislation.
Which is horrific to begin with, because why should your name be a bad name when you did all the right things?
Exactly. They're hiding so much. They just take these kids and traffic them out and then keep them. And if they have Social Security or you can pay child support, even better. Because how many times in my career have I seen kids that genuinely need help, families that genuinely need help, that we're mandated to report, and they don't get any help? These kids are still in the same crisis that they were before.
So have you found any attorneys in the Kansas area that are reputable for helping in this sort of situation?
Nope. I have been the best homegrown / attorney that you can find in the state of Kansas.
Yeah.
In fact, I've had parents contact me and they're not even aware, because they don't give you the Bill of Rights or the pamphlet, what happens during a SINK case, which was mandated by the lawsuit that was filed against Kansas in 2018 for moving children so much. Never gave it to me whatsoever. And I can literally verify that the genogram that they have you fill out in the beginning of the case, and I'd love to say the caseworker's name because she was out for blood. She wanted to get my nursing license revoked. It took them 7 months to get my unsubstantiated letter to me, but her sister, who reported her, who had or should have been substantiated and runs a daycare, she got hers within a week. Never gave me anything. But in the genogram, it said I was a victim of sexual abuse as a child. and that this is her kin. Her fictive kin were listed on the genogram, and they still allowed her to go and visit this family who bought her lavish gifts. So I have my own reservations about what their intentions were, because I don't know why a 40-year-old male who's not married to a biological sister at 38 is buying a 14, 15-year-old girl a bunch of lavish gifts. So that concerned me. But yet they still sent her to go be with this family that she's never known.
So, other than to be really annoying and vocal with all agencies and oversight that you can possibly think of, what advice do you have for anyone in your similar type situation?
Reach out to your parent advocates. There are a lot of good parent advocates. Kansas has the Kansas Family Advisory Network. They do the best they can. In fact, they've advised me, we don't even know what to do. Like, this was such a gross, negligent failure of our system. And if you can find a parent advocate, do start looking for all of your state laws. But not everyone has those resources or has the means to do it. And they're hard to find. Like, it took me a while to find the Kansas Family Guide on a sync case. It just doesn't pop up in a Google search.
So when you say the Kansas Family Guide, is that the comparable, like in New York State, we have the New York State CPS program manual. Are you saying like know the protocol of CPS in your area?
Correct.
Yep.
And Kansas does have a child in need of care pamphlet, but it is hidden.
Right.
Were mandated during the 2018 lawsuit to pass that out to every parent. That became a sync case, and I never got a copy.
So in New York State, ours are easy to find, but if you wouldn't mind, after the interview, if you could post a link so that if anyone from Kansas is watching, especially because it's hard to find, if you could post a link to the interview, I would appreciate that, because we're like cut from the same cloth. That's why I was so happy to be able to do your interview, because
I've watched all your videos and been like, you and I are thinking exactly alike.
Yeah, because I say the same thing. I always say, I'm just this homegrown person, and then you said it too. And but I'm always thrilled when I interview somebody and they have read the CPS program manual for their state, because that, knowledge is power, so as much law as you can learn, as much of the protocol that they're supposed to follow that they never follow, and call them out on it. And yeah, I've gone all the avenues through the oversight and reporting too. And I did get the attorney for children in my case. I did get him admonished. So every once in a while, your 600 complaints or whatever, one of them will finally stick. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, we've proceeded similarly, but that's the only way I have really found, what a person can do for themselves is, yes, of course, try your best to get a good, reputable attorney, because many, even like you said, a paid one for you in Kansas, worked for the other side because it's so intimidating. So get a good attorney if you can find one. But that's without saying, just because you have a good attorney, you have to become as knowledgeable as possible.
Everything you can read. Like,
And
I
I don't.
have a counter back here. I have to show you. This is all my case on CPS. And I am trying to figure out how to take it forward, because my child in the very beginning was taken under false pretenses, no warrant, nothing. And so how does that even stop? I'm working on.
And I don't know how for anyone to get their children back without working hard, personally. So there might be some magic, what is it, that Staples button, You press
And
wherever that commercial, right?
it's definitely not going along with whatever they say.
Right.
Because I went along with everything they said. In fact, one day I wanted to quit. And I had some office moms who said, no, you have to go to this meeting. You have to just go. They supported me, said, just make sure you go. And I went and I recorded it, and it was a bunch of hooey. But they're like, you have to do it. Like, you are at the end of this fight. And I did. But just jumping through the hoops is not going to work. You have to make phone calls. And I was even accused of making phone calls after 5 o'clock, even though caseworkers were contacting me after 5 o'clock. And they used that against me in court. And I said, okay, so this caseworker is calling me at 7. How can you use the fact that I'm writing emails to you people, since I'm supposed to keep a job and I'm supposed to go to parenting classes and I'm supposed to get all of these evals? No.
Well, that's the beauty of the human brain, right? The beauty of the human brain is, unlike computers, we are able to discern, right? So if you're able to use discernment, you can choose to answer the phone or choose not to if it's past 5 o'clock, and you can choose at what time you're going to open up your email.
And they figured out they should probably look at my emails. So,
right?
Just even at the end, right before she came home, the caseworker tried to argue that I missed a drug test. I wasn't drug tested the entire almost year and 2 months at this point. Not a problem. Drug test me anytime. He waits till I am on an appointment for a surgical appointment in Lawrence, Kansas. There is a snowstorm behind me. I've had this appointment scheduled for 2 months. He texts me at 10:30 to go have a drug test at the courthouse, which is 2.5 hours away from where I live. He's like, well, you can stop in Topeka. I'm like, no, I cannot stop in Topeka. It is late. And so he used that against me in court. And I said, fine. So luckily, the case had been moved back to our hometown. And just said, will you take one today? I said, sure. Guess what? Passed it. So then he orders another one, passed it. He orders another one. The judge even told him, we are not your go-between for your contracting agency, St. Francis, and the court. Because I showed up and they couldn't drug test that day. And I said, okay, so judge, I'm here. She says, your presence is noted and we are not the go-between.
Aw. Well, bless your heart that you got a good judge there, that stood up once in a while. It's hard. I see so many times that, I can't believe that all these people are bad. I think many are, but I think many go along because they feel that they're so small compared to the big bear, and they're afraid to do the right things.
And our district attorney didn't want her to come home. They wanted to order aftercare. So she came home April 6th. The aftercare consisted of 2 caseworker visits, one of which was, apply for Medicaid, which I do not qualify for. So they dumped her. They had her on all these psychotropics, dumped her off Medicaid. And then she wanted to show up again. She was here 10 minutes, never heard another peep. Our court date wasn't until the end of September. They wanted to extend aftercare. And so I finally told the judge, I opened my big mouth again. And I said, what have they done for us? What have they done? I said, they've shown up twice. I said, we've lost health insurance. They've thrown us to the wolves. You've bankrupted me. You wanted to drug test me. And now you put us in aftercare. What more are they going to do for us? And I just, after that hearing, I got a text about a month and a half later that said, we're just checking in with you to see if there's anything we can do. And I'm like, I wonder if that has anything to do with the Kansas Division of the Child Advocate looking into you, because they're all up for rebid.
Now, obviously, your daughter's been through a lot in a short period of time. A lot. She was medicated. She was put into the custody of a pedophile for a period of time. She was taken away from her home environment. A lot happened. How long has she been home for?
since April 6th. And she wants to let it all go. She asks me every day, why do you keep fighting, Mom? This is over. And I tell her, because I'm not going to let other families ever go through this. And we've had lots of crying, lots of heart to heart conversations about, if you don't like it here, then, you're home, but this behavior can't continue, or, we're a team, stuff like, dishes or whatever. And it's been a great relationship. And quite honestly, I think she's overcome all of it. But my heart breaks because she doesn't feel like me advocating is a good thing. She's like, let it go. Let's forget about it.
It's hard. It's hard. And I think about, my situation too. After, I've emerged or my kids have grown up or what have you, am I going to keep doing this? And in ways, by advocating and exposing, we're putting our life on the line too, because there's a lot of ugly people who don't like what we're telling the truth about.
They don't.
And the problem is once you know, and you can't unknow what you know. And there was a part of us that was at one time naive, and we knew what that life was like, and then can understand how other people who haven't been through these experiences would be similarly naive, and not sharing our story to those people then makes them vulnerable. And we just had a hearing in New York State. Our senators, the Senate, had a hearing about family court in New York State. And the term that they used throughout the hearing was dehumanizing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a little word. That's
It's
not like,
a word.
that's not, failing. That's not errors. That's not underperforming. That's a much bigger word. And the whole system, family court, CPS, is dehumanizing. And you know it. I know it. How can we know and not say anything? And you're a nurse, and I'm a physician assistant, and our lives are devoted to caring for patients and others. And knowing this information and knowing what they're really doing, it's
It's
hard,
wrong.
it's
There's no
hard
other easy way to say it.
hard to keep inside and sit back and let anyone else experience it.
And
So hope,
I can't. And you know what? There's not much else. The Board of Nursing already knows what happened. Like that letter was already written.
and it's hard, and hopefully, your daughter will come to understand what we're describing here, and know that it's not over till the dehumanizing treatment is over.
Yep. For everyone.
Right. Right. So thank you so much for being on the show,
Thanks for
and
having me.
thank you for sharing your story, and I wish much healing for your family, yourself and your daughter, and all the significant traumas that you've been through. And I just also want to say too, because we're healthcare providers, a lot of people get focused on post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and how these horrible situations are so harmful and torturous and detrimental. But there's also post-traumatic growth. That's another response that can happen from trauma too. And a lot of your growth is your wisdom and knowledge that you want to share with other people to help spare them from their suffering. And you gain a lot of wisdom and different priorities than you started out with in a whole reorganization. And I thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your priorities. And um, and I thank you for sharing all of that with us. And I think what you're doing is a wonderful thing. And many prayers to you.
And you as well. Thanks for having your show.
And thanks for being so inspirational for all the listeners.
Hopefully.
This is how it's done, right?
Hopefully. I'd like to stand by all of them and say, I'll be there. Give me a minute.
Yep. This is how it's done, right? This is how it's done. It was hard work for you. You got your whole, portfolio behind you there. It was hard work, but this is what hard work pays. This is how hard work pays off.
Yep. Helping others.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, thanks for having me. And I hope everyone has a blessed evening and they can survive.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks again, Miss Christine.
Yeah. You take care.
You have a wonderful night.
Bye.
Go kiss all your 5 kids.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.